Okay, let's talk about a little about the tools you're going to use. You need good work surface. Actually, you have a self-healing cutting mat. You can get these at like Joann Fabrics, Michaels, Taps Plastics. Any hobby store really should have these. And then this will basically protect your works, your desk essentially from any dings or resins or paints or whatever. Then on top of that, I have a piece of parchment paper. This is good because the resin won't stick to this. Either will hot glue or epoxy resin. It's hard to find stuff that'll stick to this. Another thing I use is a steel straight edge. This one actually has a corkboard back, so it actually doesn't slip around as much. But steel is good for actually cutting cardstock. And typically with cutting, I use just these simple utility knives, basically where you can bust off the knife and then get a fresh blade each time. They come in various sizes and styles, but I mean it's good to have both really. But the big one tends to be the workhorse for me. Another good thing to have is precision scissors, so you can go get into the details and stuff like that. But the reason why you want to have the like a steel one versus a wooden one, while you're cutting, if you have a wooden ruler, the cutting actually, when you're cutting, it actually might cut into the wooden ruler, and that will mess up the ruler and your actual cut. So it's just best to have an actual metal edge. So if you can get like a straight metal edge, don't even worry about if it's a ruler or not. It's just nice to have a ruler at the same time. Some other things you might need are some angled sprue cutters or nippers. Straight edge, straight on cutters are nice too. These are for like actually the making of armatures and for metal, for miniatures and stuff. But it's good for like snipping off excess resin if it tends to creep up or leak out a little bit. You can use these too, but these are like the workhorse. These are really tough. Other things you want to use are string sticks. These essentially just a popsicle stick. I actually use these to actually make models with as well. They're really handy to have. You can actually if you bust them up in the various sizes, you can actually have a bunch of different size stirrers. Disposable paintbrushes. I don't use these to paint with. These actually are used and will be destroyed by the 5-minute epoxy by using them to make the wavy pattern. And the 5-minute epoxy as it dries. And then when it gets to a kind of a string state, that's when you know you're done. But I'll show you that in a little bit. But once you use these with the 5-minute epoxy resin, they're totally destroyed. You're going to need printouts, probably from a laser printer, not an inkjet, because the resin that you're going to use is probably would leach the ink from the paper into the resin. So I've never tried it, so I don't know if that's true or not. But you definitely want to probably use a laser printer. I know that for a fact works. So actually, I printed out on the heaviest weight cardstock I can get, and then I go into Photoshop or GIMP or whatever imaging program. And then what I did here is I took a look at Dwarven Forge's texture or underwater texture and simulated it. Just took like some brushes in Photoshop. The stones are essentially just circles with a little bit of gradient on them, and then just you layer the different colors essentially. So the deeper the green, the deeper the vegetation and the stones are and stuff, and then you kind of just like layer them back and forth, and it creates a nice pattern. And then you just use a clear to black gradient, kind of as the drop off, If you're just doing a straight all deep water pattern, just use this, gradient, clear to dark, from out to inner, and that's fine. Or you can just do all black too. That's fine too. Because actually the color comes from the resins. But that's what you use for that. And then same thing for the edge of the water. Use like a rock texture, and then just put a simple grid pattern over the top of it, kind of like the dungeon tiles all have. It's really easy to make in Photoshop or GIMP. And then just have that as the top of the overlay, so that shows no matter what. You're gonna need Legos, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna create a mold. Essentially, what I have here, which this comes out of. Basically, the Legos or the mold is actually wrapped up in plastic packaging tape, because of plastic packaging tape, the resin will not stick to the non-sticky side. So what you do is you wrap the internal here with the sticky tape, and I usually actually go one extra step and actually put the bottom to it with the sticky tape, with actually the sticky side sticking up, and then I take the whatever I'm going to make a mold of, or a casting of, I stick that down on the tape. So this is actually too small, but just imagine that would be 6x6. So, and then once that's done, then you pour in the resin. But anyways, so you're gonna need Legos. Most of the resins are easy to mix, but it's actually pretty handy to have a scale around. This is just a kitchen scale, because then what you do is you take plastic cups. You can kind of cut them down. See, I just use the bottom to actually mix the resins, and the tops you can actually use for making molds as well. If you want to make a little miniature figure, and you would actually pour like silicone rubber on top of that, and that would actually make you a figure replica. It's really easy. It's really easy to do something like that. So I usually say the tops of these. But for mixing resin, what you do is you throw this on top, you zero it out, and then if it's a 1-to-1 ratio, then you measure out 1 ounce of resin, and then zero out again, and measure out 1 ounce of hardener, and then you can just mix it up. So you don't have to actually have like two actually separate cups, and then pour it into a third, and then mix it up correctly, and then you still you're stuck with two messy cups. You just have to one disposable cup, so that's one way to just kind of save a little time and money. Various sandpapers and grits. So like I have like 220 to 1500 on these, and then I have like a little sponge that I wrap the sandpaper with. So if for some reason you get a fingerprint and you have to sand it, or sand your tile, which actually I'll tell you about a little story about this. Basically what you do is you start with the lowest grit sandpaper in circle motions, sand it, and then go into the 400, then the 600, then the 800, then the 1500, whatever ones you have, until you get to the highest sandpaper grit you have, and it should kind of slowly polish it to where you can't even tell if there's really any scratches there. And then on top of that, then you can put the epoxy resin to create the wavy pattern. That'll eliminate any kind of like blemishes or marks and stuff. And I think that's it for tools. I'll talk about resin in the next video. So, see you then.